There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello, BookTube. I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back. Today is Friday Reads for September 22nd. I often have trouble uploading my videos, so who knows when it's actually going to debut online. Plus, Japan we're a day ahead, so it's Friday here and it's still Thursday where you are, but I hope to get it up by Friday your time. Today I'd like to talk about clunkers. What I do, how I react, and I'm curious about what you do and how you react when you encounter the odd crappy sentence or paragraph in your books. I am pretty unforgiving and I have a pretty low tolerance for it, and I have a few examples, and then I want to talk about why this is up for me in a book that I'm reading this week. The first example is from a novel that definitely got mixed reviews, but was very popular. Everybody was talking about it last year. The Association of Small Bombs by Karen Mahajan. I was curious about it. I'm interested in novels about international political issues like terrorism, so I tried it, and within the first few pages I came across this paragraph. Now, the story opens with this Mr. and Mrs. Kurana. Some of their children are killed in a bombing. So it starts out very intense. This paragraph made my skin crawl. In the mornings, he'd rouse Mrs. Kurana, and they'd make eerily passionate love, using more muscle than necessary, their insides lurid with lactic acid. And then both would stack their slack bodies against each other and cry, so that later in the evening, when Mrs. Kurana returned from her errands and began to unwrap the sheet from its bulge of bed, she'd notice two parallel lines of salt that marked where they had lain in the morning, shoulders soggy with tears. Lurid with lactic acid? Are you kidding me? What the heck is that? Stack their slack bodies against each other? No, no. I read a few more pages after that. This was embedded within a first chapter. I can't remember if it was the first or the second, but the rest of the writing was okay. The story was really interesting, but I found a few more examples of really just awful prose, and I said no, so I bailed. And I have no regrets. What would you do? What would you have done? The next one, the excerpt is very short. This is a Canadian novelist who I had never read, Michael Ondaatje. He's of Sri Lankan descent and very famous. He's the one who wrote, oh God, here I go, I'm going to forget the name. It was made into the movie. You know what I mean. Oh my God. The only problem with my iPad is my camera, so then I can't easily check, right? I'd have to stop and make it start a new video. So I'll just show this embarrassing excerpt and I'll paste it in below. His most famous novel was made into a film, and I think the actress was Helen Bonham Carter. I saw the movie. I had never read any Michael Ondaatje. So in August, I believe, I started reading Divisadero, which is one of his more recent ones. Now, the novel starts out very interesting. It's a family with a strange history in California, and there's a couple sisters, and there's a relationship with the hired hand that goes awry, and then in the second chapter we're transported several years later where one of the sisters is in France, and it's really, compared to the first chapter, it's really boring, and she's on a date with a Romani guy, and the way that romantic vibe between them is described, it was just horrible. It was like a Harlequin romance. It was just terrible. And I got to this one sentence and I bailed. That I will not, on principle, finish a book that includes this sentence. All over the world there must be people like us, Anna had said then, wounded in some way by falling in love, seemingly the most natural of acts. Jesus. So yeah, that's that went into the trash pretty quickly after that. Those two examples are in my mind because I'm encountering a little bit of clunky prose in this Canadian novel that I'm reading. It's a debut, The Water Beetles by Michael Kahn. Now, to be fair, to be clear, the clunkers that I'm finding here are not at all on the level of those last two examples, but they do give me pause. So I've only got one marked, which I will read. The setting is that this is at the very beginning of the Japanese invasion, or the battle for Hong Kong. The Japanese have not invaded the island yet, and so this is just describing the mood of the Hong Kong people. And Michael Kahn writes, "It seems to me that people wandered through the days plunged into a thick syrup, complaining about the price of goods or the noise of trucks in the street, gossiping, their mouths and eyes and every other orifice filling up with the cloying ordinariness of life, as though wanting to be buried in it." Now that sentence just stopped me in my tracks and pulled me right out of the story. It has potential. There's a couple nice turns of phrase. I'm still not sure about cloying ordinariness, but that's not what I object to. The killer here is the every other orifice. Really? And we've got plunged in a thick syrup. Don't love it. It's not, doesn't disgust me, but every other orifice is disgusting. And wanting to be buried, it's not horrible. But where I encounter this type of a clunker in this novel is where the writer is grasping for some kind of lofty or poetic way of setting a mood or making a connection between the two periods of the protagonist's life, some kind of a metaphorical something or other, and those sentences or those paragraphs, and there aren't many of them, but they fall flat. Oh, I haven't been holding the book up. This is the book. Unless I encounter a lot more like that, I don't think I will bail. I'm about 40% into it. The story is really interesting, and his prose style mainly is really spare and I would say workmanlike. It doesn't sing, it doesn't dance, it doesn't leap off the page in a poetic way, but just a few pages after this clunker, he shows a mother and her 5-year-old son. The husband, the father, had just been murdered the day before by the Japanese, and these mother and son come to stay with the main character's family. They're, of course, traumatized, and they are sitting down for their first meal in this house with this family, and the little boy can't stop fidgeting and can't stop crying, and his mother, who is of course beside herself, is scolding him and trying to get him to sit up and eat his lunch, and he won't. And just the way Michael Kahn describes that, using very simple language, it just tore my heart out. It was like, oh, so I mean, this guy can write, but it's also he's new, so I'm not giving up. He's not a Michael Ondaatje. When you're one of Canada's premier novelists and a sentence like that makes it past your editor and into print, I'm unforgiving. I will never, ever read a Michael Ondaatje book. So there. This is a little bit different, but I encountered this one sentence in Chintu by Jennifer Nansubuga Makumbi that stopped me in my tracks too, and it was just a case of register. So this story is starting out in the 18th century, and the main character is a chief of a clan, and this is a conversation that he has with one of his wives when he gets back after having made a month-long visit to the king who had just taken the kingdom in a coup. He tells her everything that happened on his journey, and a lot happened. I'm really enjoying this story. It's very dramatic. But he says to his wife after he's told her all his news, he says, "Now you know what's been eating me. Tell me. Any news?" I mean, that's not a bad sentence. It's just, this book is not translated. She wrote it in English, but Isn't that jarring to you from the 18th century? I don't expect the novel is not written in any kind of 18th century language, whatever that would be in Uganda, right? But that's too casual for the clan chief. Now you know. Now that you know what's been eating me, tell me. Any news? No, it's the first problem I've encountered in the book, and it's certainly not something I'm going to bail on it. I'm just going to be watching for that kind of a language thing. There's a fancy name for when you use, you refer to, what's it called? It's not chronological error, but is that what it is? They were always pointing them out, for example, on Downton Abbey, when they would use slang that hadn't been invented yet. That's how I feel about this. So, I'm curious, what do you feel, or what do you do when you encounter really shitty writing that just kind of stops you in your tracks? How forgiving are you? In terms of a general update on my reading, and I've already been talking for several minutes, so this is going to be very quick. I finished the audio novel Hisham Matter, it's in the Country of Men, just a couple hours ago. It ended quite powerfully, but overall 3 stars. Wasn't impressive. Now, part of the problem, I'll probably talk about it a little bit at length in my September wrap-up, but the story is told to a child narrator, and Matar just doesn't do it well. Michael Kahn is telling his story, very similar kind of traumatic war story, or social crisis type of story through the eyes of his child narrator, and the 2 boys are about the same age, and Michael Kahn is doing a much better job. So I finally finished The Makioka Sisters by Junichiro Tanizaki. I had been reading it for 3 months, and I finished it, and I loved it, and I'll have more to say. The other book that I both started and finished this week was a short book of poetry by Thomas Transtromer called The Deleted World. I don't read poetry, but I read it for a book challenge. I mentioned it in yesterday's video, and I loved it. I guess I gotta start reading more poetry, eh? I remember when he won the Nobel a couple, 3 or 4 years ago. Anyway, this is a short poem. It's called Black Postcards. 1. The calendar is full, but the future is blank. The wires hum the folk tune of some forgotten land. Snowfall on the lead still sea. Shadows scrabble on the pier. 2. In the middle of life, death comes to take your measurements. The visit is forgotten, and life goes on. But the suit is being sewn on the sly. Black postcard indeed, hey? And to quickly finish here, next up, I'm going to start 2 books today or tomorrow. Now that I've finished 3, I'm doing an A to Z book challenge for Litzy, and I have to read 1 book for each letter of the alphabet by title. I had one picked out for H, The Harmony Silk Factory by Tash Ah, and I was all set to begin it, but then I just previewed the blurb about it again, and was reminded that it's a World War II story about the Japanese invasion, and that's just a little too close to the novel that I'm reading now, The Water Beetle, so I'm not going to do it. I'll read it later, but I'm not going to do it for this. So instead, I thought, what else do I have that starts with H? And I went through my TBR list and thought, aha! I'm so excited I can start this today. Ellie Smith, How to Be Both. Many people say it's her best. I've also heard other reviews that were decidedly less enthusiastic, but given how much I loved her Autumn, and I have this sitting on my pile, and thought I would have to wait until next year because I'm doing 3 book challenges that I hope to finish up next month, and unless a book fits in there, I can't do too much else until they're done. But I can fit this one in, so I'm very excited. The other book that I'm planning to start today or tomorrow on audio is Queen Lucia by E.F. Benson. I had raved on my introductory video that I posted about 10 days ago about how much I loved Benson's Map and Lucia, a 1935 novel, so you can check that out if you are interested. That novel, Map and Lucia, is actually part of a multi-book series. I've been saying recently that I don't do series. Well, I'm about to do one, I guess. So I'm going back to do the first one and then catch up. I've heard that the only one that really shines, that stands out from the whole series, is the one that I've read, Map and Lucia, but I'm about to find out. And the Queen Lucia will be my Q book for my A to Z reading challenge. That's all she wrote. So, I hope you're having a nice Friday, and thanks for watching.